G'day guys and gal. With everyone's favourite obese dictator potentially kicking the bucket, I thought now would be a good time to fix the end times lore of Cathay, Nippon Ind. Now you might be like, what lore? They were pretty much ignored during the end times as well as for the rest of the entire setting prior to that. Which, while technically correct, doesn't mean they don't deserve a good send off. The reality is, no matter how much China and India suck right now, the mythology as well as medieval aesthetics were really awesome and would have translated beautifully into the Warhammer setting. Monkey kings, dragon emperors, terracotta warriors, samurai, Hinduesque demigods, all of these things are really awesome unique aspects of Asian legends and history, and all of these things are actually present in Warhammer Fantasy. They're just so neglected that you don't even know about them. In canon, they're pretty much just genocided over the course of a couple sentences, with Cathay being the only nation to not be completely useless. And even then, the small victories they're able to achieve are worth nothing as they sail off into the sunset and are not mentioned in Age of Sigmar at all as of yet. If you don't know much about Cathay, Nippon or Ind within Warhammer Fantasy, don't worry, neither does Games Workshop. However, I was able to gather enough info to create 2 snazzy videos explaining the lore of Cathay and Nippon. So if you want to check those videos out to get some context for this video, the link will be in the description and comments below. Before we get started, it would be very disrespectful of me, considering we are looking into the equivalent of Warhammer Fantasy Japan, not to mention hentai. More specifically, the Warhammer Hentai calendar I'm currently in the process of commissioning. This was made possible by the massive support you guys have given me, and as a thank you to all patrons, even the ones that send me $1, you'll all be getting a discount on the calendar when it launches. So if you want to get access to a boatload of custom Warhammer hentai, as well as a discount of the physical copy of the calendar when it comes, please consider checking out Patreon and supporting my demonetized ass. Today I will go over the canon parts of what happened to the Asians, and then compare it to what I think should have happened. We'll then explore some new lore for these nations. This video follows the rules of my other Fixing the End Times videos, hence I cannot change major plot points, only minor details and subplots to make the main story more bearable, and even at times, enjoyable. In saying that though, there are basically 0 major plot points that occur in the East, so it's time to activate my creative genius. Let's get into it. As we are covering 3 distinct factions for this video, I'll structure by covering the end times and my fixes for each faction, and then I'll tie them together at the end to give them their own end times ending, as it would be retarded to try force them to join in on the final battle of Middenheim. Starting off with China, Cathay. Now, just to give context on Cathay, they are extremely lazily created. Cathay is another word for China. They have the Great Wall of China, the Dragon Emperor, they love jade shit, and they all smoke opium. All they need now is a human-engineered virus and a corrupt government, and it wouldn't even be a fantasy setting anymore. Prior to the end times, the only Chaos God and Skaven clans that really gave much of a shit about Asia, especially Cathay, was Titsnich and Clan Ishin. Titsnich for obvious reasons, Chinese people are fucking nerds, and Clan Ishin because they learned a lot about their craft from the ninjas of Nippon, aka Japan. Hence when Chaos first started assaulting Cathay, it was in the form of the Chaos Dwarves backed up by the Norse and Hung tribes. Not sure why they're called Hung, although I'd probably bet that their patron god was Slanesh. Anywho, Cathay struggles to form up an army to defend the bastion from this invasion as their courts are flooded with secret Titsnichian cultists, as well as the issue of loyal non-Chaos Cathithians being regularly assassinated by Clan Ishin. As a start to the Cathayan end times, I don't mind this too much. It outlines direct threats to Cathay and also gives Titsnich some more highlights. Considering that Titsnich was actually quite unhelpful during the end times, with Nurgle and Khorne carrying most of the load, it's cool to see our blue hentai boy gets more screen time. It's this next part I want to make more detailed. In canon, the Chaos Dwarves penetrate the Great Bastion due to these issues with Cathay, but eventually the Dragon Emperor just sorts out the massive Skaven and Titsnich problem somehow. In my version, I want to explain how he was able to manage what would have been an absolute bitch of a task. Like defeating the smartest Chaos God and then beating the sneakiest Skaven would have been a mission and a half. In my version, the Dragon Emperor goes full Sherlock Holmes on these menaces. As he is a celestial being, having the spirit of a dragon, he isn't much like Zinni the Pig, more so like our potentially late Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un, hence he has a lot of wisdom. After witnessing the failures of his noblemen to rally troops to save the Great Bastion, as well as a number of attempts on his life, he realizes that he is surrounded by enemies who grow more aggressive with their attempts at sabotage the more he tries to rally and defend Cathay. Hence, he devises a test. He is able to identify some of the traitors, but not all, hence he tells his noblemen one by one in secret that he's meeting with the Shogun of Nippon on how to work together to fight off the darkness gripping China. The catch is that he informs all of them of a different meeting location, whilst the ones he already knows are already traitors, he sends them off to the aforementioned locations.
But Majorkill, wouldn't the different noblemen communicate with each other that the Dragon Emperor told them different locations and see through his ruse?
Shut your stupid cunt mouth to me before I snitch on your tits. Titsnitch is so obsessed with scheming, betrayal and outsmarting that he never works with others if he doesn't have to. Hell, Titsnitch fucking betrays himself sometimes just for laughs. The dragon Galrouch, who we'll dive more into later in this video, was corrupted by Titsnitch and now has two heads that always fight each other. Each nobleman would want to claim the glory of laying low the Dragon Emperor and gaining their god's favour. Titsnitch himself would have been curious of the Dragon Emperor's actions, and he would have refused to intervene or warn his followers, as he's not one to ruin a good scheme. The plan is sprung. Every single traitor nobleman sends assassins to their designated location and kills whoever they find there, every victim of those assassinations being a Titsnitchian cultist. When the survivors, who had loyal noblemen know of their location, return to the Dragon Emperor, unaware that they were saved by luck, he also gathers all the noblemen who sent assassins to the meeting to gather with them. They are all frustrated to see him alive, but maintain their facade. Suddenly, the Dragon Emperor smiles and says, "Any other god, any other faction would have worked together to lay me low. Even the simplest of fools would have seen through my ruse, but in your arrogance and quest for validation from your uncaring god, you have fallen the furthest." Before the nobles can react, volleys upon volleys of jade arrows are fired into the crowd, slaughtering the Titsnitchian noblemen. Jade dogs and armoured dragon warriors charge in and seize any survivors. They are then all viciously tortured within an inch of their life, until they leak the names of any remaining cultists. Hence the Titsnitchian threat is gone, and the Dragon Emperor can now rally his forces. In canon, the Dragon Emperor also roots out the Skaven somehow, which I would like to touch upon in my version. With the Great Bastion about to fall and the realm struggling under the death of so many noblemen, despite their questionable allegiances, the Dragon Emperor does not have time to try track down the Skaven threat, so he engineers an unlikely solution. The Dragon Emperor gathers all the realm's troops and generals to him and leaks to the common folk that the threat of Clan Ashin is terrible to behold, that they must truly be the most powerful Skaven faction, and that they will rule Cathay. The people hear this and feel fear. Clan Ashin hears this and feels pride. All the other Skaven clans hear this and feel rage, jealousy, and itching to backstab. Overnight, Clan Ashin is assaulted by a dozen Skaven clans within Cathay. All Lord Sneak can do is pull all of his agents out of Cathay and use them to his own protection and war. With the Skaven dealt with, the Dragon Emperor marches to the Great Bastion. In canon, he arrives to find it breached, and then a massive three-way battle occurs between the Dragon Emperor, Chaos Dwarves, and Grimgor's fuck off huge WAH! Which ends in the Dragon Emperor retreating and then basically gathering his people under ships and sailing off into the sunset, hence ending the canon end times for Cathay. Now this is lame as shit, but it would have been somewhat acceptable if it explained Cathay's return in Age of Sigmar, which really hasn't happened yet, so it's lame as shit. In my version, the three armies collide. The forces of the Dragon Emperor, backed by their mythical beasts, stand fast against chaos and destruction. The Dragon Warriors cutting through the undisciplined greenskin forces, whilst their jade dogs rampage through the Chaos Dwarf lines. Above, the Cathayan serpentine dragons tear wyverns and ifrits apart. The forces of the Dragon Emperor begin to gain ground against their foes, Grimgorn himself being focused on crumping the Chaos Dwarves, not too concerned with the small yellow men pressing against his flank. The battle was going well for the Dragon Emperor, until he heard a mighty twisted roar. Whilst his men heard it in their ears, the Dragon Emperor heard it in his soul. Over the wall, the massive form of Galrouch appears, its golden features torn to shreds and covered with the typical eldritch corruption of chaos. It lashes out uncontrollably, bathing the battlefield in fire. Cathayans, Orcs, and Chaos Dwarves are incinerated by the thousands by the mightiest dragon in the world. The Dragon Emperor reaches out to the spirit of Galrouch in an attempt to calm the beast or even heal it. As soon as he feels its spirit, he violently recoils, vomiting on the ground in front of him. He looks around to see nothing but fire and death for the battle. The greenskins were too numerous, and the Chaos Dawi war machines had entered the fray, causing horrific casualties. Just like in canon, the Dragon Emperor calls for a retreat, not because he cannot win, but because the victory would not be worth it. His forces travel to the Cathayan coast, where his golden fleet awaits him. In canon, he boards these ships and fades into obscurity, leaving most of his people to be devoured by the destruction of the world. But this is not the canon Dragon Emperor, hence, he orders his ships outfitted for war. He would stay and save his kingdom, or die trying. Whilst Cathay's Dragon Emperor makes solid progress in fighting off his foes, even in canon, Nippon does not. Clan Skyra go full Clan Shin specs and assassinate shitloads of Nipponese nobles and samurai, basically doing what they did to the Southern Realms here. Then Grimgor and his orcs rock up, burn Nippon ships, kill most of their armies, and then fuck off. The orcs got to Nippon by accident, as originally they were chasing after the Dragon Emperor and his retreating army, as he wanted to prove he was better than the Dragon Emperor. Grimgor has a seriously intense inferiority complex, to the point where he has to beat everyone in submission before he can be satisfied. That's not what I want in my version. Clan Skyra launched their sabotage of Nippon, catching the island unaware and made initial success. However, more and more of the agents do not report back, as suddenly the Skaven find themselves the one who have been sabotaged. Their supply lines, leadership, and messages either vanish up or turn up dead. The Skaven are not accounted for the ninjas of Nippon, the true masters of stealth and silent warfare, versus the Skaven who specialize in making big bombs and definitely not silent warfare. They had no chance. Even Clan Shin would have been hard pressed here. In my version, the Greenskins also do not arrive in Nippon, as the Dragon Emperor chose to stay in Cathay and defend it, hence he would have to deal with the Greenskins, not Nippon. Clan Skyra soon realize they cannot win a war of shadows, hence they launch a more traditional invasion. This proves to be way more successful, as their warp-fueled weapons of war smash through the defenders of Nippon cities. Basic muskets, fireworks and arrows don't really match up well to doom rockets and warp lightning, it turns out. In canon, the Nipponese are only really able to fight back against the Skaven because the Greenskins wreck their tits so hard. However, without these obnoxiously cuddly mushrooms around, it's up to the Nipponese. In my version, city after city falls as the Shogun pulls his forces further and further back. Nipponese heroes like the Red Samurai are able to score some small victories around the continent, but it's just not enough. Eventually only one last fortress remains, where all the surviving samurai from all the surviving clans have gathered. Clans that have warred against each other for thousands of years make their last stand united. The war monks wake one final prayer to their god, the Orange Simka, before they prepare their lightning fast punches. The Skaven unleash their weapons of war once again, smashing into the walls of Nippon, with little the proud samurai could do in return. The Skaven forces march towards the walls and prepare to scale them and capture the city. In their arrogance, they believe no one would come to save Nippon or come to their aid. After all, Nippon and Cathay had never been allies. But common enemy in desperate times are a hell of a thing. With the Skaven artillery no longer guarded by the Skaven hordes, the saviors of Nippon came. From the clouds, scores of Kirin, Cathayan dragons and other oriental flying beasts came, each one mounted by a legendary hero, with the largest of the dragons mounted by the Dragon Emperor himself. Before the Skaven could react, the Cathayans smashed into the Skaven war machines and gun lines Rohan style. Seeing this, the Nipponese too sallied forth from their fortress, their katanas and fists outmatching the Skaven spears easily. The Skaven force was stuck between two vengeful armies of Asians. Attempts to form up were met with limited success, as the Red Samurai called out in his demonic voice for slaughter, and slaughter is what the Skaven got. The rats experience genocide as they are torn to shreds by all matters of men and beasts. Their warlords were systematically targeted and massacred by the Cathayan heroes, whilst the samurai and their Ashugari warriors carve a path through their routing force. Within moments, the Skaven army was in full retreat. Not that it saved any of them, as for the next 3 days, every Skaven on Nippon was mercilessly hunted down and exterminated. After the massacre, the Dragon Emperor met with the Shogun and explained the crisis happening. He also requested the aid of Nippon, as the only way they could weather the storm would be together. As such, the famous dragon fleet set sail for Cathay, and not a moment too soon, as Grimgor's forces had engaged with the Cathayan army who had remained behind. The arrival of the Dragon Fleet, as well as the Dragon Emperor's flying units, greatly bolstered the defenders. However, this was Grimgor, the chosen of Gork, the avatar of Mor, the incarnate of beasts. He would not be denied, and the Dragon Emperor knew this. He flew his Kirin to Grimgor and beckoned a challenge. Better that one of them die now and end the battle than waste both their armies and be prepared for the true enemy. Grimgor smiled and accepted the challenge. With his celestial might, the Dragon Emperor charged forth, slashing at Grimgor with blinding speed. The duel was fast and intense, the Dragon Emperor opening up many wounds on Grimgor, who took it like an absolute champ. Eventually Grimgor grew bored of the game, and with a mighty swing he shattered the Dragon Emperor's sword and knocked him on his ass. The Dragon Emperor accepted his fate and lowered his head to allow Grimgor to finish him off. Instead, however, Grimgor merely laughed before saying, "Grimgor is the best!" He then ordered his army to follow him as they moved away from Cathay and the Nipponese forces, heading over towards the Darklands. The Dragon Emperor was confused but grateful to be alive, hence he assembled the unified army and went down south, to Ind. Now whilst Cathay had to contend with Clan Ashin, Titsnitch and Chaos Dwarves, and whilst Nippon had to fight against Clan Skyra, Ind was the target of Khorne, as well as many beastmen hordes. Khorne wanted to claim the skulls of the many Ind gods, even though they probably didn't actually exist in a format where you could physically claim their skulls. Abral the Undefeated was one of the more prominent invaders, so was Wulfric the Wanderer, and they were both present in Ind during this time in canon. In canon, Ind is the least explored Eastern Kingdom for the end times, only mentioned that there were various characters in Ind and then it got raped really hard. In my version, the forces of Chaos hit Ind hard, their armies being unable to withstand the onslaught of Khorne and the Beastmen until through great sacrifice, their many gods materialize in the physical realm and become beasts on the battlefield. Suddenly Chaos lose their momentum as these new god warriors tore apart their champions. Only greater demons or legendary champions were able to fight back and even kill some of the Ind gods. However, there was just not enough Ind gods and there was too much land to cover. They would win one battle using their gods and then Chaos would win 5 where their gods were not present, forcing them to retreat further and further north, losing legendary ancient cities time and time again. As the force of Ind group together, the remaining god warriors prepare for their last stand, as they finally find themselves suddenly reinforced by old enemies. The Cathayans and the Nipponese had arrived. Despite the unification of every available warrior in Warhammer Asia, the unified army found themselves still outnumbered. Abral the Undefeated roared a challenge that was matched by his endless horde of Khornite warriors, bloodletters and bloodthirsters. The two armies charged. There was no room to maneuver, no tactics to exploit. The armies of Khorne did not use archers, artillery or mages, hence there was no specific threat to target. With the massive presence of Khorne's influence, the armies of Asia were also filled with bloodlust, and likely would have disregarded strategic orders if any had been given. With a mighty crash, the two armies collide. Jade warriors tore apart beastmen as a greater demon disemboweled a Cathayan dragon. The red samurai sliced apart a chosen of Khorne as Wulfric bisects an Ind god warrior with the head of an elephant. The Dragon Emperor did not assess his surroundings, only focus on each kill, his celestial might burning inside him, causing his eyes to glow gold as he crushed enemies many times his size. The Asian missile units shot who they could, but with the battle being little more than a blood orgy, many of them joined in on the glorious melee combat. Eventually the Red Samurai comes face to face with Abral and quickly changes his name to Abral the Defeated as his smug head rolls from his shoulders. The demon within the Red Samurai hums with pleasure as it hunts its new prey, Wulfric. The two champions clash, trading blow for blow, until they both simultaneously land a strike. Wulfric's ancient blade pierces the Red Samurai's upper torso, whilst the red katana slices across Wulfric's body. The Red Samurai drops to the ground, dead. Wulfric does not. Despite winning the fight, the large wounds on his body are bleeding profusely, not helped by the demonic magic within the blade. Wulfric is forced to withdraw from the battle and eventually the East itself. As the battle hangs in the balance, the Dragon Emperor feels a familiar dread as Garduch has returned, his roar and size even bigger and more angry than before. As it flies above the battlefield, it spasms as one of its heads attempts to burn the Asian armies, whilst the other head attacks it, diverting the fire blast that would have killed thousands. The Dragon Emperor sees this and he knows what he must do. He reaches out to Garduch with his dragon spirit once again. He feels the twisted agony the creature feels, but forces himself to push onwards, fighting back the corruption which seeks to take a hold in his soul, before he finally breaks through. He witnesses the eternal battle of Garduch's soul. The dragon has been fighting for control of its body for thousands of years, whilst Chaos has been doing its best to finish the corruption. The Dragon Emperor makes his choice. His body lights up in a golden fire, as does Garduch's. The demon within the dragon screams as it is burnt by righteous fire. The Dragon Emperor smiles as his body burns away, his spirit infusing with Galruch, and together they banish the chaos from within. Galruch explodes in a blinding light, boosting the morale and strength of the united Asian armies, while scorching and burning the demons of chaos. When the light lowers, Galruch is reborn, a shining golden dragon, free from chaos and full of hatred. It wreathes its golden fire across the battlefield, melting chaos warriors into their armor and banishing greater demons back to the realms of chaos. Even with the golden dragon, the battle is hard fought, but it is eventually won. 9 out of every 10 Eastern warrior had been killed. They had only a handful left of Ind gods, and most of their commanders had been slain. Khorne rumbles with amusement, punishing the great demons for their failure as they return to the realms of chaos, but also secretly impressed with the Eastern armies. With the defeat of Titsnitch, the Skaven clans, Khorne and the Beastmen, as well as the destruction of the Chaos Dwarves at the hand of Grimgor, the end times had been prevented within the East, as the Chaos Gods angrily turned their attention back to the old world, frustrated at their defeat. The Golden Dragon of Galruch, now with the essence of the Dragon Emperor inside it, becomes the Guardian of the East, fighting off any chaotic attempts to reinvade the land until the end of the end times. For context, Galruch's canon ending is basically exists for a bit and then he has a massive seizure and dies. Now my ending for the end times will be different to what actually happened, so you'll have to wait until I finish the rest of my Fixing the End Times videos before you get to see the very end of Cathay Nippon Ind. My goal was to do justice by these factions that could have been so interesting had Games Workshop put the time into them. This video was mostly just my lore as there wasn't much in canon to compare to, so I hope you enjoyed my interpretation of it. And that does us for today guys. I'll be streaming this Friday, 10 AM Washington DC time, 3 PM London time, or 12 AM Melbourne time, to celebrate 69,000 subscribers.
But Majorkill, why not do it for 70,000 subscribers, which you actually just hit?
Shut your naive cunt mouth, Timmy. I'm not just gonna not celebrate 69,000 subscribers, you degenerate. The stream will be a drunk stream, and I don't mean like 2 beers, I'm talking about genuine alcohol poisoning specs, so make sure you get down. If you enjoyed the video and want to support the channel, then Patreon is the place to be. Only $1 gives you access to everything, including a boatload of Warhammer hentai. Join the Discord for more memes, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.